So our speaker today is Theresia Intag. She is the CEO of Intag Consulting, which is a recruiting firm. She's going to be talking about what recruiters are looking for in applicants. She is the founder and CEO of this company. She created a unique recruiting business that specializes in fractional recruiting services, and she will explain to you what that is. We've had several speakers who were fractional, and they look pretty good considering. But it is a fractional recruiting service. With over 10 years of recruiting and human resource experience, she is well-versed in matching great people to the right job. She has worked with Samsung, Bazaar Voice, Yeti Coolers, Abaco, Foresight, Dimensional Fund Advisors, Spanning Cloud, Holtzman Partners, and many other organizations to build their talent pool. She is a working mom who appreciates the value of flexible work environments and juggling work and family, especially now, I have no doubt. She currently lives in Austin, Texas, is a fan of live music, who is not, travel adventures with her family, and paddleboarding. With no more delays, Theresia Intag.
Hey, everybody. How are you? I'm so glad you're all here for this. I'm Theresia Intag, and I've got some good insight information for you. Hopefully it's helpful. I'm going to be taking you through a lot of things because I know what it's like to be looking for a job as well. So I'm going to be giving you some tips around that in addition to a recruiter's perspective and what they're looking for. So hopefully it's not too much information and you have some good takeaways. I'm going to try and keep it simple, but I want to make sure that I'm giving you some really valuable pieces of information as well. So as you can tell, I have COVID hair. It's much longer than what it used to be, but I have been recruiting since 2007. And I recruited for many years for many different companies, and eventually started my own company, but I will get into some details on that because I wanted to acknowledge that I think for some people with where they're at right now, our careers can take a new turn when we've lost a job and we might be going into something new. And mine has definitely done that over the years. When I was out of college and newly married, I was doing sales for a recruiting firm at the time for about just a couple of years. Then I started doing training, which led to running a nonprofit for 6 years. And the nonprofit was focused on training job skills to high school seniors and college freshmen and doing scholarship programs. So I got to know the nonprofit world very well for 6 years. And from there, I actually stepped into a role where I was doing some human resources and some recruiting for a nonprofit. And that's how the real recruiting kind of career kicked off. And so I just wanted to bring it up because I really feel like that a lot of people are, kind of looking at that right now, if they should, kind of move into something new or be flexible for opportunities. So, things can change, and sometimes you just have to do what you got to do. And that's perfectly okay. And then there's people, their career paths look much more steady, but I haven't seen where somebody's career path all the way through looks that steady very often. I think that's more the abnormal thing that you see. So with that being said, when I was recruiting for a lot of companies, different kinds of companies like Samsung, and also which is more of like a semiconductor company. I also got into software companies and a lot of startups. And one of the big ones was Bazaar Voice. I started working for them right before they went public. So I learned a whole bunch of information just about how companies change, grow, and also about software recruiting. And over the years, when I worked for some other software companies, I realized that the executives didn't always understand recruiting very well and how to run it. So I created a business model that was cheaper than traditional staffing agencies. We do it hourly, and companies can just call on us to step in and be the recruiting team, and stop using us when they need to. So it's more budget friendly for younger companies. And that's what we call fractional recruiting. We just step in when they need us and then step out when they don't. And we act more like a recruiting team for our clients as opposed to just handing them resumes. So we develop closer relationships with them. So that will take us to, I'm trying to get my slide to move here. Here we go. So one of the things I wanted to start off with is as you know, job searches are challenging, and sometimes they can get wearing and you forget that you really have a lot of value. Each of you has something valuable to give to an organization. So remember, you're special. And in job searches, one trick that I learned that has helped me when I've been searching for jobs that I like to pass along is that make a list of 4 or 5 things that you've done well in your past jobs, even if they're small things, even if you can't think of anything, but just try to think of 4 or 5 things, make a little list on a Post-it note or a piece of paper, and then put that near your computer. Because you're going to have days when you're doing the job search. I'm sure some of you have already had those days where you just feel down, unmotivated. And I think you get kind of in a tunnel vision of, oh, this is a painful job search, I'm getting nowhere. And you start to kind of feel like you're not valuable or that you're not good at this because you're just not having success at finding a job. And you're not getting the feedback you normally get from a regular job. I need feedback. I need a lot of positive feedback to kind of keep me going and motivated. So when I have that list of those 5 things I've done well, it reminds me when I'm feeling down that, oh yeah, I have done good things. Oh yeah, I have been successful. And oh yeah, I am intelligent. I had to remind myself those things. When you're feeling down, it's hard to remember. So I think that those are really helpful to have around throughout your whole, job search. Keep them near your computer or where you're sitting the most. Sometimes I even say, put them on your mirror in the bathroom, just post them up there. The other thing I want to mention too is, you may have heard this before, but I always think it's a great tip. Reach out to 2 or 3 people. They can be random people, even 4 people in this organization, if you can connect with them easily, and start a weekly or even bi-weekly, whatever's convenient, group where you meet for an hour. I call it a coffee meeting. So you can get on Zoom or Google Chat, Google Meets, and you can actually meet for an hour once a week and just talk to each other about how the job search is going. It's a great way to kind of create a little mini support group, kind of like this is a big support group, but it's a little bit more personal. And it just will kind of keep you going and moving forward with small steps. And I always want people to remember that too. Even if you do just one thing for your job search a day, just one thing, whether it's you do one application or whether you do one task around your job search or connect to, a few people, that's all you need to do. Just keep doing that every day. One thing a day. If you can't do anything else, that's okay. Because sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. If you can do more, great. But if you feel like you just can't do anything, just tell yourself, I just have to do one thing and that's it. Okay. So now we're going to be moving on here to what recruiters are looking for in applicants. So this is where, I want to give you some insight as to what the recruiter's world is like, so you understand kind of what is valuable that you do in an action and what's not so valuable. Hopefully this will help you a little bit. Some of you may already know this. I don't know how much exposure you've had to recruiters, but some of you may not even have any idea what recruiters are dealing with. So this is kind of a day in the life of a recruiter. It seems like a lot of paperwork, even though we don't really deal with a lot of paper as much anymore. But recruiters, a lot of times when they're working on a job, they can get anywhere from 30 to 100 applicants in a week. It's a huge number, and most recruiters are working on 7 to 10 jobs at a time. So if you do the math, that could be as many as 300 to, I didn't do the math. I thought I wrote it down, but I didn't. But it's like you're dealing with, just 30 to 100 applicants times 10 is 300 to 1,000 applicants a week that a recruiter is potentially going through, all those resumes, which is really important to remember that, the recruiter is overwhelmed. And I think a lot of people feel like they're being ignored or they're falling into the black hole. And it's more about recruiters are just overwhelmed and they're trying to respond to as many people as possible and trying to reach out. But they may not have the right tools. Different companies purchase different applicant tracking systems, which is where your resume goes when you apply. And some of those are better than others. Some of those have some really good auto response things or can keep candidates more engaged. Others, they just don't work well at all. It's hard for recruiters to find resumes from past applications. So it just really depends on the tools, and every company is completely different with what they use tool-wise. So some recruiters are better equipped to manage all the applicants coming in than other recruiters. And like I said, every company is very different. So with keeping that in mind, standing out is a little trickier, and it's not going to be in the way that you probably think. It's not going to be the flashiest resume. It's not going to be, you saying these remarkable things about the company. Those help, but it's really just a slightly different approach than that. So that's what I kind of want to walk you through, kind of what is helpful. And we're going to help you stand out a little bit better at the end of this in a crowd of applicants. And right now there's more applicants than ever, as you know. So we're going to hit on that in a couple different ways, but just stick with me through the presentation because it'll give you different tips to stand out in different ways. Okay, so here we go, guys. So part of what a recruiter wants, and this sounds really selfish here, but they want you to make them look good. Recruiters have quotas to meet. They have to, get into, they have to meet certain numbers, how many hires they have per month. And they're looking for the best people that are going to fit those roles the best and hopefully move forward and be successful with a placement. So they're being really particular and picky about, who they're choosing out of the applicants. And you want to make it as easy as possible for them to see you when you're applying for a job. So make sure that the resume that you're submitting is going to speak to the job description of what you're applying for and to the culture of the company. Now, I'm going to show you some tricks later on that will help you do that in a much easier way so you're not rewriting your resume for every job application because that's just not scalable. You can't do it, and it'll take you probably 2 weeks for every job application, and you'll be late in applying. And we want you to apply quick if you can. As soon as you see a job posting pop up, which Indeed is great at like giving you every day new job listings that might pop up, then boom, apply for that. But I'm going to show you an easy way to tweak your resume for each of the applications. Also, it's helpful if you're organized and you research a company before you go on that first phone interview with a recruiter. There are many times when I talk to somebody and I'll say, hey, have you had a chance to look at our website? And they'll be like, no, not really. I meant to, but I forgot to. Well, to me, that says, okay, you're not very passionate about our organization. I want to make sure that you're somebody who at least is really interested in the role and is going to, be enthusiastic a little bit. So you don't have to be an expert in the company, but if you say to me, oh yeah, I looked at the resume or I looked at the website and I, see that you guys are doing this and this, and I find it very interesting. Keep it short, but like acknowledge that, yes, you know what the company is about. To me, that speaks much more positive to me. So I'm going to be like, okay, let's continue the conversation because they're definitely wanting this role. Also understand the skill requirements in the job description and be able to make your skills, your past experience speak to that job description. So even though you've done probably, anywhere from 20 to 100 different things in your career, depending on if your career is earlier or later, you don't need to speak to all of it. You need to be as concise as you can be around the job description. And then you can add a little more if you think it might be relevant, but don't go on and on and on about your career. Recruiters want to see somebody who can be concise and focused for the most part. So keep that in mind as well on that first phone call. Okay, so when you find this, these are all little tricks here. When you find a good match with for a job that you're like, oh, I can do this job, I've got a lot of the skills that they're looking for. Here's some little tips of maybe how you could be noticed a little bit more. One of the things that I suggest is using LinkedIn. LinkedIn can be a really helpful tool. Connect to the recruiter on LinkedIn. That way they are seeing your face and your name and your expertise too, how it relates to the job. And they may reach out to you right away. Sometimes the recruiters are getting a lot of connection requests. So if it's at a time where they've got just a bunch, they would just maybe doing accept, and they're not really looking at the profiles. But I would suggest that once you connect, you send a very short, concise message that says, hey, thank you so much for connecting with me. I really appreciate it. I love your company, and I noticed this role was open. Here's my resume if you think I might be a good fit. Be humble in your message, but send your resume to that recruiter. Or if you're not even sure about the recruiter and you think you might be able to figure out the department and maybe the hiring manager, you can do that as well on LinkedIn. You don't want to bombard the whole company. That'll make you look kind of, it's just a little overdoing it, but maybe one, maybe two people send your resume to. It's kind of like a backdoor way. I wouldn't say, like, do it 1,000 times, but because it feels a little more personal reaching out that way. But definitely for those jobs that you feel like you are a strong fit for, do it, because it will sometimes get your resume sent around in other ways. And the recruiter may come back and say, oh, great, thanks, apply, apply online. Of course, apply as well when you do this. But this is just a way to maybe get noticed ahead of time. And because recruiters are so busy and they're going through so many applicants and everything, it's really nice when you get a resume that's a great fit for a job and it's right in front of you and you're just like, oh, they're a good match. I'm calling them right now. I'm reaching out to them right now. So that's just a little trick there for you that hopefully will be helpful. Okay, so here we're going to get into the resume a little bit, because sometimes I feel like people are being too careful with their resume or they're doing too much with their resume. And we want something a little bit more in the middle. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips. Your resume doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. It does. I would say, please make sure there's no typos in there, but there's not one perfect resume, I guess is my point. And it depends on the industry you're in. Marketing resumes may look just a little bit different, a little more engaging, depending on the type of marketing experience that you're speaking to. And a sales resume is going to look more structured. But one of the basic formats that I like to see, or that I like to have candidates have, is maybe just a little introduction at the top. Like you've got your name, your address, your email address. You want those for sure, and your phone number, so it's easy to see where to contact you at. Maybe a small paragraph that's like a summary of your skills. Now, in this paragraph, that's where you're going to tweak things. When we talked earlier about tweaking your resume per job, this is where you're going to do it. And you don't want it to be more than like 3 sentences. It needs to be concise. It needs to speak directly to that job description. And so you don't want to put in a lot of extra fluff in there. The fluff does no good to a recruiter whatsoever. They want to see, do you have these skills? And the skills that you do have, you're going to say, yes, I've got blah, 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 blah. You're going to say, I am, skilled in da, 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 da. Then you get into your professional experience, and you have a professional experience below that. Some people put their education at the top if their experience is not very broad. It doesn't matter if education's towards the top or at the very bottom. It can work either way. When you do your experience, though, make sure your experience has, a line about the company, the dates that you were at that company. You do want the month and the year. It's very helpful. And also, maybe the location of the company as well. But then your experience, you want to keep it very concise with maybe some bullets of like a couple lines of general experience, and then bullets that highlight the expertise that you have. Because then you can take those bullets and you can rearrange them to move your skill set. Like, let's say I have 3 years in Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and this company needs Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I'm going to move that to the top of my bullets, so that when they're glancing at my resume, because recruiters are going through so many resumes, they're skimming them. So when they skim them, I'm going to make it easy for them to see that skill set of Salesforce Marketing Cloud is right there at the top bullet. So they're going to catch it right away and see it. Because I'm not going to read through a bunch of, I try to read through the resumes, but when they're paragraphs of information and they're long paragraphs of information, it's too much. I miss stuff. I can't pick out the details. Another little trick is to maybe bold, those skill sets that they're looking for in a job. So here's how to manage it better, so you're not rewriting your resume for every job application. For your own personal file, you're going to create a master resume. This master resume is going to have everything you've done. It can be as long as you want. It doesn't matter. It's going to have all the skill sets, all the great projects you've done, whatever. It's just for you. You're never going to send that anywhere. You're never going to post it anywhere. But you take that master resume, then you have a more kind of version that's twiddled, that's whittled down a little bit more. And in this version, you want it to be 2 pages, maybe 2.5, but typically do 2 pages. And then you're going to also you're going to look at your master resume, and you're going to see, oh, I have these basic skill sets. Copy and paste them if they speak to the job that you're looking for. So what I always do is I have this, my master resume, but then I have this kind of more normal version of a resume that's better summarized. And then I will, in that little paragraph at the top that we talked about earlier, I will tweak that a little bit for each job that I'm working for. And I will just look at my bullets for my experience, under my experience, and I might rearrange a bullet to put things to the top that speak more directly to the job that I'm applying for. So it's just 2 simple steps that are pretty easy to tweak. And once you do it a couple times, you get the hang of it. You can even, save a couple of versions that are focused on different areas that you kind of see in frequent job descriptions. I'm trying to think like a project manager. Some project managers, they're going to want experience in some technical areas. Some project managers, they don't. They just want to see that you've run projects from beginning to end, in these certain areas. So you're just going to maybe tweak those bullets a little bit so that it speaks to the job description. That way, the recruiter is going to notice your resume, because they're going to say, oh, that person has what we're looking for, or they at least have, 3 out of the 5 things we're looking for. So that's really, really important. It's really important for me as a recruiter when I'm looking at those resumes. Also, another helpful thing is make sure on your LinkedIn page that the dates align with your resume. I have had a couple situations where the dates are off, sometimes like by a few months or 6 months. And if it seems like it's a typo, I'll ask the candidate about it. But if it looks like it's happening a couple of times, which I've seen that too, then I think they're not telling me the truth on their resume about their job experience or how long they're at a company, and they get thrown out. And so that's what you want to avoid, that you get thrown out when it was just a typo. So double check to make sure your LinkedIn is aligning with your resume. It doesn't have to be verbatim, the experience, because your LinkedIn is going to be a little more generalized. It's going to be really brief and generalized because you have a smaller space of, where you're putting your information. But I just want to make sure that people have that little node to double check that and make sure your dates are the correct dates. Okay. I know it's a lot of information I'm throwing here at you, so hopefully it won't overwhelm you, but they're just little tweaks. Once you start doing them, they get easier. Okay, so we want to get you to the top. We want to get you to the top of the mountain. We want to get you to, the top of the pile of papers. So this is another trick that I've heard work for many people over and over again. It's a little challenging with COVID right now, but I still think that it's a good tool to kind of keep you in the game and keep you engaged as well. So networking and mentors. This is tricky. I know it's really hard to do this. And believe me, it's painful sometimes to reach out to people, but I'm going to try and make it easier for you. If you are in an industry, I think there was somebody in the beginning of this, new member announcement thing who was trying to get back into project management. So one of the things I would recommend doing is going on LinkedIn, finding a couple of senior project managers that are probably in companies that are the size companies that you're looking to work in. Maybe reach out to 2 or 3 because it's going to be hit or miss on LinkedIn, but connect with them on LinkedIn. When they accept your connection, go back to them and send a short note that says, hey, I am looking to get back into project management. I like your experience and what you're doing. And I was wondering if I could jump on a quick call with you for 30 minutes to kind of get up to date on what people are looking for in project management skills. And you're looking at them as more of a mentor kind of person. And that's how you want to approach it. You're not approaching it with, hey, I'm looking for a job. Hey, I'm unemployed. Don't bring that up at all. You're looking at it, hey, you're an expert in this area and I want to move my career in that direction. And I would love to, is it okay if I pick your brain a little bit? That's kind of more the messaging that you want to have. And the reason I say reach out to 2 or 3 people is because they may all not respond, but one might out of those 3. And if 3 don't, then you do 2 or 3 more because you don't want 3 of them coming back to you saying, sure, and then you're like, oh gosh, I got to talk to too many people and I'm asking too many people to be mentors. But so do the 2 to 3, and that's a little bit more manageable. I feel like when you're not feeling so great, it's really scary to sometimes reach out cold to people, but it works. It totally works. So if you can even reach out to one person, do it, because it just can. And nowadays, they don't even need to be in the same city that you're in. It's nice if they are, but they don't have to be. So go onto LinkedIn, find a couple people, do a search of project manager people, and that'll give you a list of people with project management skills. And you can even focus it on Austin, Texas, and it will show you some people in your area and look for somebody that you think, oh, wow, they look like they're doing really well in this arena. And I want to learn more from them, somebody that you can learn from. And that's how you're going to approach it. Hey, I would like to learn more and I want to move forward in my career. So I wanted to touch base with you and learn about what you did or how you did it or what you see people looking for in project managers. If you have a few minutes and you make it like a 20 or 30 minute phone call, that's it. You're not going to bug these people to death. You're not going to send more than one message to them. It's really one message and they either respond or they don't. And in that 30-minute call, have a list of a couple of questions to ask them because they're going to, in that call, learn about you as well because they're going to be asking about you and you're going to be explaining things that you're doing and where you want to go. That's going to be somebody now that you have in your network that is in your arena. And if that company by chance or that department's looking for a project manager, they're going to come back to you because they already are getting to know you. So you're a person they're going to think of. But in that conversation, you can ask them, hey, would you be open to being a mentor for me? Because I would like someone to touch base with once a month. I wouldn't do more than that. Once a month, that's about to get answers on moving towards a more senior level. So that's a really great little thing to do. And you're also networking. When you do that, when you're reaching out to these people and talking to them, it's a great way to network online since that's pretty much the only way we can network right now. Some people are willing to have coffee in person, but most aren't. So we're doing a lot of Zoom calls. And if you don't have Zoom, I think if you have Gmail has a thing in there when you create a calendar invite that you could do, Google Meets. It's free and it works great. I do it all the time. So networking and mentors. The other thing too is, I'll even tell you a successful story that happened to a friend of mine who she used to be like a instructor for doing kind of like exercise kind of programs for moms. And she wanted to move back into marketing after she'd been doing that for 5 years. And so this is exactly what she did. She would reach out to people on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm trying to get back into marketing. I wanted to pick your brain, and I wanted to see what areas maybe I should focus on in my training and in my development. Do you mind spending, doing a quick 30-minute call with me? And people would say yes. And she would have like 3 or 4 people that she talked to, and she developed that relationship and asked them to kind of be mentors for her. And within a month, one of them came back to her and said, you have great energy. I love, your enthusiasm. We have an entry-level role in marketing. I think you'd be perfect for it. And she got hired. So it works. It totally works. If you can, if you can kind of muster up the courage for that, I would say give it a shot. You got nothing to lose except people not responding, and that's no big deal. You don't look bad or anything. So I think it's something to actually go for, and it makes you stand out. Okay. So I've given you a lot of tips on like basic resume, what recruiters are looking for. Part of helping them look good is making sure you're prepared for the interview process if it moves forward. So we mentioned earlier that be sure to know something about the company that you're interviewing with. Do some research on their website, but also be sure to maybe look at a few articles that were written about the company. That could be some helpful background. And remember too, you're interviewing the company to see if it's a good fit for you as well. So knowing maybe where the funding comes from for the company, making sure they're stable, like those are really good things to kind of learn about. And those articles might give you some insights around that. The other thing that I recommend is always have some kind of small notebook that you take, whether it's an in-person interview, you take it with you, or have it by your side on a video interview. The notebook, you're going to list again your strengths, especially how they relate to this particular job that you're interviewing for. I don't know about you, but when I go on interviews in the past, I would go blank. At times, I would get nervous, and I would forget who I was. I forget what I'd done in my career. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I have. And you're just like, like, what do I do? I can't think of anything. And you kind of just freeze. Well, when I have that notebook and I have a few of those skill sets written down that relate to this job, I just glance at it and I know, oh, I can speak to those things. And that helps to keep me moving forward when I'm stuck or when I start to get nervous and freeze. So I always recommend that. And also another good thing is list in that on another page, list out questions you want to ask about the company, whether it's about the role, the expectations around day-to-day, what it looks like, the team maybe, what the team's comprised of, how many people on the team, the company, what are the goals of the company, where's it going, is it in growth mode, is it in kind of, keeping things level mode, what are some of the biggest challenges they have. When you start asking those questions, you're almost taking you're taking over or taking charge of the interview itself. You sound knowledgeable in those questions too. Questions are really good. It more becomes about the relationship between you and learning more about the company. And it's not just the spotlight's on you completely. You're kind of turning the spotlight a little bit on the company as well to say, hey, I want to make sure this company's right for me. And that shows confidence, I feel like, when you're doing an interview. So have that notebook on your side. And then the other thing too is I want to get into videos a little bit because COVID, I call it the COVID effect, that changed now. The majority of interviews are now video interviews. I mean, my clients are hiring people left and right over video. So it's a little different than when you're in person. And you want to make sure just a few little tweaks to do to prepare for the interview. Be a little bit prepared and try this out. But, one of the things I tell people to do is test out what you look like or what your environment, your background looks like before you do an actual video interview. Do a mock with a friend, call them up, make sure your lighting's good. I have a light in front of me, a ring light. And when I turn it off, I'm pretty pale or pretty dark and shadowed. So I don't shine as much. So I like to have a little light on there to brighten things up a bit. I feel like it just sends a more positive vibe when I'm talking with somebody. So I feel like that's true too for when you're interviewing. You want to be, as energetic and positive for them. So I listed on the bottom of this slide here, there is a link that is a $30, and I can even show you mine too, so you can just have an idea of what I'm talking about. Simple, keep it really simple, but I have a ring light, and in this ring light, it has a holder for my phone. So I do a lot of calls with my phone on there, and it's a tripod that's adjustable. It's got these different little levels that can go taller or shorter. I put it on my desk. So, and sometimes like right now I have to be looking at slides, so I'm on my computer, but usually I'm on my phone. And that way the angle's right. So like this, I'm looking more straight at you. If I'm more like this, you know, that looks bad in an interview, or if it's like this, they're looking at my nose. So I always want to make sure that people kind of know, that people kind of know, you know, like they're being aware of what they're looking like on video. So that light in tripod is $35 on Amazon. You do not need to spend a ton of money on that at all. It's very simple. And you can use a regular light too. You don't really need anything. You can use your computer camera if you have that, so you don't necessarily need the tripod. But just kind of make sure the lighting's right. Make sure you don't have a bright window behind you that's going to make you look really dark. Or, you know, like I turn this light off because it's too bright and distracting. So it also makes sure, like I recommend solid colors. I mean, if all you have is a plaid shirt, that's all you have. You got to do what you got to do. But, you know, try to make sure it's, you know, not too distracting, whatever you're wearing. You know, make sure you just look clean and whatnot, just like you would for a regular interview. But I think that those are just little tiny things that make you look that much better on video, and make sure you're in a quiet space. We're all getting used to noises, and kids, dogs typically aren't that big of a deal, but in an interview, it's hard to focus when you've got a bunch of stuff going on behind you or near you. So if you can, you know, even if you have to be in a closet that looks like an office, do it. But, and the other thing too, is that it doesn't take much to create kind of a clean space. It can just be a plain wall, as long as the color's not like a really strange, weird color or overwhelming color. Just a plain wall is fine too. You just don't want, like, a lot of people will be in their bedroom and you can see their bed's really messed up. They have clothes piled on top of their bed. You don't want that. Make it clean, neat as possible. And I've even seen people who put up a piece of colored paper that they taped that was just smoothed out on a wall in their garage because they had no space in their house. So they went to the garage, and it was the only quiet space too. They put up this like big sheet of paper, taped it, put like a plant, like I have, that's a fake plant, put a little plant back there, on a little kind of table thing. And then they had a little table in front of them with their computer on it, and and their light on them, and it looked like they were in an office. It totally looked like they're in an office. And they pull the computer away for this video class, and they're in a garage. The car's right in front of them. So really, any space that you could do that with, to make it look good on video.
We had one of our people who recently was hired, had an extensive career at Dell, and he started off with a really sort of a long resume with a lot of detail, and somebody gave him, we've had lots of conflicting advice, and that happens all the time. You have, everybody has their own opinion as to what they like to see. And so some people want you to have, you know, 1 page, 2 pages. Some people say you should, we've had people who were experts on LinkedIn who have said LinkedIn wants you to go all the way back to the beginning of your career. They want to see career development. They want to see all of that. And then you have somebody else who says, no, absolutely not. No more than the last 15 years. You know, so poor job seekers are just, they're beaten up with
Yes.
conflicting advice. But this guy said that he had a really nice, detailed resume that was pretty comprehensive. And then somebody gave him the advice that he needed to only go back 15 years, just with what's relevant to what he's applying for now. You know, just have it be sort of like, here's the information that I have that's relevant to this particular job. If you want to see more about my background, I'm happy to provide that later. And he cut his LinkedIn profile, truncated it as well, and got it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So it works, you know. The
Yes.
proof is in the pudding.
Yes, yes. Yeah, a lot of times I'll tell people to like, if you've had a lot of jobs, those further away jobs, just put the title and the name of the company and the dates. You don't need to do the description so much unless it's really relevant to something you're continually applying for. But otherwise, like you can keep it really basic, because there can be, I hate to say this, but there are companies I've seen. There's, especially in Austin. Austin's a young company, and ageism is an issue, and it sucks.
Right.
And so sometimes I tell people like, maybe leave off a couple of things, and don't put the date of when you graduated college on your resume. If they ask, tell them, and be upfront and honest about stuff. But you don't need to like force that in front of them so that that's what they're thinking about first. You want them to look at your skill set.
Okay, let me ask you about this. So we had Jeannie Oliver, who introduced herself. So here she is. She had a long career in technology and, project management, PMP and so forth. But now her last 11 years was in a completely different field, unless she wants to emphasize her management skills. But somebody who wants to, where their relevant experience is earlier. Do you want them to say relevant experience and bring that up from the past and stick it at the top, or how would you advise somebody to deal
Yeah.
with that particular
So
situation?
it's a good question. I would say like on the first, most relevant job, which was her running her business. I would say something like, keep it really brief. So it's not distracting from the rest of your past experience. It's more relevant, but just have a line in there that says, business owner, put the name of the business, put the dates. And you could even say took a break from project management to run my own company for 11 years, successfully for 11 years. Looking to move back into project management full time now. And then you have your project management jobs listed there. And, any projects, like she's looking to do project management projects right now, anything you do volunteer wise, put it up at that first line above that. And you can even say like your consultant, even if you're volunteering, that's still to me qualifies under that kind of consultant role, that you're your own person, you're an advisor and you've been helping, different organizations with different project management, projects that you're working on. And that way too, it shows you're jumping back in and being more relevant and get, if you need a certification of some kind to make it more relevant too, that's helpful. But I really think reaching out to mentors and making connections is great.
Okay. This one says, question, what if we don't want to let LinkedIn be our life story to date? What if we want to have a semblance of privacy in it?
So, I mean, if you don't mind, I would say definitely post the job, the company, and the titles and the years that you work there. You don't have to go into descriptions of what you did day to day. You can keep it more generic if that's something really important to you on the privacy piece. But otherwise, that's what, your LinkedIn profile is for recruiters to look at. They want to look at your profile. So they want to see kind of your basic experience that you have, and if it aligns with their jobs. So then I'd almost say like, do you need a LinkedIn profile? If you're that concerned about privacy, then maybe that's not the thing for you.
Okay, I have two questions from, we have quite a few. All right, so one question says, do you use an ATS system to grade resume by keywords, or do you read every resume? How important is it to apply quickly? Recently, I heard you should not apply to jobs that were over a week old.
Okay, so there's a lot in there. So some ATSs, especially in big corporate companies, your really large organizations, they're going to have an ATS that might kind of read the qualifications, and they might have things set up that can push people out that aren't qualified because they didn't have certain things in their resume. That can happen. But most companies out there that aren't those big corporations, they're going to have a basic functioning ATS that's not really reading the words in your resume. It's more just taking the resume, putting it in a certain bucket with the job. And there might be some questions in the beginning that can throw you out as unqualified, but it's not your resume itself necessarily. But I do recommend doing PDF. Save your resume as a PDF. that tends to get read better on ATSs. Some ATSs can't read documents very well, and it will show up blank, and the recruiter has to download them. So it's just another step that they have to do when they're
Oh,
trying to
that's
move
so
quickly.
interesting because we've had some people say that they don't want PDFs
Mm.
because they put it in their own format
Mhm.
essentially, and with the PDF they're not able to do that.
Well, yeah. Yeah, there is that
What do you
comes up
think about people
periodically.
sending both? If they send both, do you think
If
companies
it
will
allows them
actually?
to, I don't know if a lot of ATSs or applications will allow that.
Uh,
What usually gets picked up, it may not look quite right, but if you do, that's why I say kind of keep your resumes pretty basic and simple, little
yeah,
intro paragraph, your information at the very top of your name and address, and then your basic jobs and bullets, because those are usually picked up easily by certain ATSs that download things.
yeah. The one that you showed
You
that
do
you like
Word.
so much, which I like as well, the columned resume is trending
Yeah,
now.
it
But
is.
and I
It is
think that
trendy.
on JobScan, when we've done that, sometimes the columned resume will scan and
Hmm.
sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just reads those lines straight across. It doesn't read the sections.
Right.
And so it just depends on the ATS system, I
I
guess, whether
think
you can do
think
it.
like more marketing resumes start to get kind of fancier with some things in their columns and popping it out. And I think that people in those departments are looking more like they'll understand that that's what they're trying to do with the resume, even if it doesn't come up right, and they'll download it. But yeah, otherwise I recommend keeping it basic because so it's read a little bit easier. Don't put a lot of fancy weird things or weird bullets in there. Keep your bullets
Yeah,
basic.
formatting.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody else, we have two or three questions. One says, um, how do ATSs, oh, that was a separate column. Uh, and so for Woody, we've had some when we've done it through JobScan, we've had some where they read the column just fine. Sometimes they'll take that columned information and stick it, an ATS or a JobScan will stick it at the bottom as a separate section, but they'll
Yes.
scan it that way. And then we've had a couple where the system just would read the whole thing across, so you don't ever know. But the simpler the formatting, the better it is. If you have
Yes.
a fancy one, that's the one you take to the interview, or you get
Exactly.
somebody to
Yes.
fax it to them or something like that.
Yep. Or email
And
it to
then
somebody.
um, somebody had said, let's see, it's up higher, something like, if you're looking for a senior level job, can you have too few bullets? Like if you only have two bullets under each job, is
Yeah, you
that
don't
too
want
few?
just two. You would want, five at least under those jobs, especially senior level. But you also, it's just super important. Read that job description. Read what that job description is requiring, not just nice haves, but requiring. Those required skills, if you have them, put those at the top of your bullets. The
Right.
nice to haves, put those at the next bullet.